Hi, welcome to Shelf
Hi.
Indulgence Book Club. Thanks for being with us today to talk about Do No Harm.
Hi. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, everybody.
I'm excited to have you. I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot really fast, and then we share it as our thumbnail for our video,
Okay.
and then we will get started. Is everybody ready?
Mhm.
One, two, three. Okay. All right, who wants to start?
Hi, I really appreciated the setting because I'm in Washington State.
Oh, cool.
Yep,
So,
I'm in Gig Harbor, which is 20 minutes from Tacoma. So I
oh,
appreciate.
I'm from Seattle, so that's why I said it from there.
Yeah, I'm from Georgia, where most everybody else on this call is, but I moved out here 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
enjoyed the content because I worked with homeless mothers recovering from addiction for the last
Okay.
four
Yeah.
years that I've been out here.
Oh, that means a lot to me.
So I know
Yeah.
quite a bit about addiction, especially out here in Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. So my brother has suffered from addiction from opioids for most of my adult life. So that's why the book, well, that's why I wrote the book, and that's why the book has, I suppose a lot of the authenticity, hopefully, that it does. And that's why I said it around the opioid epidemic. I had a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions around the whole just debacle of everything that's happened. And I just wanted to set a story within that realm.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I was going to ask what research you did to write the book. It sounds like some of your life was your research, but
Yeah,
did you do any other?
yeah, I still did a lot of research. So because my protagonist, Emma, is a doctor, I didn't really know, what does a doctor do in a day besides like check up on sick people. So I had to really kind of, I interviewed a few a few doctors, primary care doctors, and a few surgeons, and just a few different people in that whole like medical, realm of like, what do they do in a day, and what would be realistic in terms of what they prescribe and how they might get away with doing these things. Has everybody read the book? So I'm not giving away
Yeah.
any.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if she's like stealing these prescriptions, like where do they keep these prescription pads, and how can she get away with that, and are there any checks? Is it nationwide, or federal, or is it state to state? So I had to do a lot of research on that. I also had to do tons of research on the chemo that Josh, the child, goes through, the different the different stages of his illness and then his recovery. So there was a lot of kind of medical stuff that I just didn't know before, and I had to do a lot of research around that. But that sort of that just really fed into the story that I already knew in my head. So this is the first story I've written, because I'm not really a plotter. And this is the first story I've written where I knew what the story was going to be about. I knew who my protagonist was going to be, and I knew exactly what sort of character arc she was going to go on. And I didn't know the ending, or I never know any of those details, but I did know my character really well, and the character arc that she was going to go on, which was a corruption arc. So I knew all of that even before I started.
Yes.
Who was the most challenging character to develop, especially since you knew Emma's character arc already?
Hmm. That's a tough question. I think maybe Nate was a little tricky at first, because I really had to get into a man's kind of mental headspace, like not only a man, but just like a cop, like I hadn't written a cop before, a detective. I had to really get into that headspace of like, what would he be thinking as a man, feeling like he has a very ill child, and he wants to do whatever he can to help him get better. And so what are the things that he would want to do? And I think that getting that right maybe took me a little bit more time than Emma, who I just felt like I really knew right away. I think so. Initially, I wasn't planning to write Nate's chapters at all. I was going to have the whole thing be from Emma's point of view. But then as I started writing, I was like, what would make the tension even stronger is if I have somebody really close to her who doesn't know what she's doing, and it'll be her husband. And then not only will he be her husband, he'll also be the detective that is on her case.
So I thought it was really interesting that how these two characters, when they're presented in their relationship together, are so see each of them as being so perfect. Like he is madly in love with her, and she is like an angel, perfect character. And she also is like, oh my God, this man is, a lifesaver. I've never had anything like this. And so they are looking at each other, and that's kind of your initial picture of both of them.
Yeah.
I just thought, and then of course she starts on her thing with and she's a doctor, so the drugs and getting drugs and so forth is that's obvious. But then it takes a while to realize how broken Nate is as a character, because you just first you're shoving toothpicks up his nail bed.
That was,
So what are his issues? What guilt issues he has? I guess she has too. And I don't know. I just thought that was pretty interesting how they start as that couple and then evolve. So
I think so both of them, family is the most important thing. And Nate has these things that he's done, like he's been in charge of being the man of the house in his mind, for his family since his dad was ill, and that was a massive pressure, a massive responsibility for a teenage boy. And then he had these issues with his friend as well, and so he has a lot of this guilt and this self-loathing that he hasn't let go yet. But he feels like Emma is this perfect woman who can give him this family and make everything better. And she is the same way. Like she has this really, devastating past where her parents, everything that happened with her parents, and then her brother obviously was addicted, and she has this really traumatizing past as well. And so they've come together thinking that they can fix each other rather than going, actually, I need to fix myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's also why Emma clings so much to Josh, and to this idea that if she can save him, she's saved her family, not just her current family, but her past family that she lost tragically. And so she just wants to save her family and to save any make sure that just Josh lives.
Right, because she felt so helpless, which she was as a
and now as an adult, she wants to find a way where she doesn't have to be helpless. And since she's a doctor, she's found herself in this position where she's like, well, actually, I'm not as helpless as I used to be, and I will do anything to maintain that.
Right.
And so she pushes the envelope for sure.
Did you like want people, or did you have an idea like because you had her figured out like that, were you making any moral judgments in terms of whatever she was doing? Was it right? Was it wrong? Was it justifiable? I mean, at the end, obviously I don't think you can't say, I don't guess, that a doctor getting other people addicted or killing them or disseminating things that are going to kill them can be justifiable.
Yeah. Well, I wanted Emma to be a very morally gray character. So she started out with really good intentions. And throughout the whole book, like to the very last page, her main goal is to make sure that Josh lives. So that goal is good. That's a good, morally good, wonderful thing for her to do. But the lengths that she is willing to go in order to do that, I wanted people to see that, well, first of all, that life is morally gray, but also that addiction is morally gray, and that the things that these people do, sometimes they're for a good reason, even though they may not have good kind of intentions, and they may not have good results that come from them. And so being a corruption arc, she became corrupted. Like she didn't just go through a negative character arc, she became completely corrupted by this journey that she went through. And her goal was to get Josh to live, and she got that goal, but what was the cost? And so I wanted people to think about that. What is the cost that is happening with the pharmaceutical industry and with doctors. And you know, most doctors are good and they're trying to help their patients, and they have these, you know, patients who have many problems, multifaceted problems, and we on the outside maybe can't see it. And I think I've seen with my brother, I've seen just so much, you know, with his addiction, so much judgment and so many harsh words about addiction and addicts in particular. And I think that I just really wanted to show that, you know, nothing is as black and white as it seems. And so I really wanted to write a character that illustrated that she was going on this journey where she had a good goal, but she really messed it up along the way. And because of that, she lost some very important things. Like, she got to keep Josh, but she lost that family unit that she wanted. So, you know, I just wanted people to look at the morally gray aspect of it for her as a character, and for the story, and for the whole opioid epidemic. Yeah.
When did you envision this being set? Because it seems like some of those things were still being established with like the checking of opioid prescriptions and how much was written and all of that. Jesse and I were talking about the timeline and figuring that out.
So I wrote the book in 2018. So it was kind of set around that time, right around that time when they were starting to, as far as I'm aware, they still don't have any sort of a federal database for checking. You can go, and at least this is how it was when I was writing the book. You could go from Washington State, get a prescription, and then cross the border to Idaho and get another prescription from a different doctor, because everything is private healthcare. So you could just go to a different doctor and they'll still sort that out for you. But if you're in Washington State, I believe that there is now a prescription checking system. But if you cross over to a different state, you know, you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if a federal one has been implemented now, but at the time, back in 2018, there was nothing. And so that's bonkers to me.
What would you have done in Emma's position?
That's such a good question. And I've been asked that before. I don't know. I don't think I would have done what Emma did. But that's the thing, is I really think that you don't know what you will do until you're in that situation. And yeah, I don't think I would have sold them, not for that money. I don't think so. What about you?
I don't know. Like you said, you don't know what you're going to do until you're in that position. And I don't have children, but I know Meryl knows. Meryl's my neighbor. We share a wall. We both have townhomes and share a wall. And so she watches my dog Annabelle, and there's like nothing that I wouldn't do. And I know that's my dog, not my child. I know I didn't birth it. And I get it's a whole different level of love when it is your child. So I'm not discounting or underestimating, but I'm like, even when I leave, she watches Annabelle because she has separation anxiety and it's on medicine and things like that, because she eats my clothing and it's very expensive and it's almost killed her. So like, the lengths that I would go for her, not selling anything, obviously, but I got to have a paycheck. I've got to pay for all her medicine to keep her healthy and well and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. I've been asked that a lot, and I don't think I have children and I would do anything for them, but I actually don't even know if it would have occurred to me to do that, which is funny to say, because obviously it occurred to me in the pages of a book. So I wrote it.
I was like, you wrote it.
Yeah, I wrote it, but I don't know if I would be, I don't know, devious enough or brave enough, I suppose, to try to do something illegal like that. I don't know if I could actually do that.
I'm not praising
I think
material.
that Emma is very brave and she's very courageous and she's very clever and she's really manipulative. And that was really fun for me to write, because I actually don't think that I would be that clever about it, you know, and I don't think I'm in real life that manipulative. So it was really fun to step into a character that I thought was just very different from me as a person. But no, I don't think I would do it.
I was going to say, I know.
I'm not
Yeah.
brave enough. I'm sure I would immediately end up in jail and without a job, and my kid would be, you know, with social services or whatever. So
yeah. Good question though.
Um, did writing this book energize you or excite you, or was it exhausting? Especially since you were writing about something that was semi close to home in
I think
some ways.
it was cathartic because, you know, there was every book that I write is personal to me in some way. This book was probably more personal to me than any other book I've written. And so, you know, obviously watching my brother go through these just peaks and troughs of addiction, and like he goes to rehab and then he comes out and then he's back in rehab and then he's in jail, and then, you know, just watching that is really difficult to watch somebody you love so much going through that, because you feel like, it's so easy. Just don't do it. But from obviously somebody who's suffering from addiction, it's not that easy. So trying to see from my brother's point of view and from anybody else's point of view was very important to me in my life. You know, I was a journalist before I became an author. And so it's really important to me to try to see the other side of the story in order to get the full story, you know. And so I think it was really cathartic, and it in that way it energized me, because I was like, oh, this is how I'm feeling. This is how I felt. You know, sometimes you feel these things that you don't, well, for me, I feel these things that I can't figure them out until I get them down on paper, until I write them down. So I think in that way, it really helped me identify my emotions and how I was feeling, and my anger at the whole like pharmaceutical industry, for example, and just, you know, finding out through the pages of this book that there's no one person or even one company to blame. There's so many and so many breakdowns along the whole way. And I mean, I could go into my my feelings about health insurance, but that's a whole other discussion, but anger about that as well. And so I think in that way, it was really cathartic and therefore very energizing. I really enjoyed being able to figure these things out the way I felt, and I enjoyed meeting these characters and finding out where they went. I'm aware that the ending is quite controversial. I did write another ending, but I felt like because of the things that Emma did, it was right for her to lose everything when she gained Josh. So, you know, I think that it some people will like it, some people won't. It's a bit of a hit and miss.
What was your alternate ending? What happened?
I was going to write something. Well, I was starting to write something around Nate finding out the truth, and then Emma getting caught and him bringing Josh. So Josh gets better and him bringing Josh in to visit her in jail. So like a happy ending, but I didn't feel like that was the ending that was right for Emma. Right. And Emma was the protagonist. So yeah.
Has your brother read the book?
My brother doesn't really read a lot. No, he was actually in rehab when this book came out, and I gave him a copy. I sent a copy, but he doesn't, as far as I know, he hasn't read it. No, he doesn't really read a lot. I think when people who've done a lot of drugs, it really affects their brain and the way that they think. And I'm not sure he would really have the focus to be able to read a book, a full-length novel. So no, unfortunately not. But I did dedicate it to him, and I did tell him that. And yeah, I did talk to him about like publicity and talking about him, because obviously it's a privacy issue. And he was like, well, look, this is my reality. So if it can help anybody else, then go ahead and talk about it. So he knows.
Well, good luck to him.
Yeah, thank you. He's doing really well right now. So that's, I think, you know, that's the most important thing, is it's about right now, and right now was good.
I was going to say, with addiction, that's kind of what you have to take it, is day by day, and how is today.
For sure.
So,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking through my questions to see. I had a list for you. I was excited. So thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. No, I love talking about my books, and it's funny because, you know, I wrote the book so long ago, it feels like to me. And then it takes a year of editing, and then another year of packaging, and then the year of writing, and then finally it's out in the world, and I'm like talking about the book, and I'm like, but I wrote it years ago.
That's what a lot of authors, we've had several authors join us at different times, and it's always interesting to when you realize the process and how long it takes.
Yes.
And so they're talking about this book, and it's like, oh, that's old, because they've already worked on like 2 others or whatever.
Yeah. So I've written 2 books since this one came out. Yeah.
Of your books, which is your favorite that you've written? Is there one that has stuck with you or resonated the deepest?
So I always say that my books are like my children, and it's impossible to choose my favorite because I've written them at different points in my life. So they've resonated with me at different points in my life, but also because whatever one I'm writing right now is my favorite. And it has to be, because you have to have that level of enthusiasm to get through 100,000 words and new characters and a character arc and a plot arc and all of that. I think you have to have a lot of enthusiasm for that story. So the honest answer is whichever one I'm working on right now. But if I'm to take that one out of just put that one aside and look at just the books that have been published, even still, it's like choosing between my favorite children or between my children, choosing my favorite. Like, how can you decide that?
Can you talk about what you're working on right now?
I can't, I'm afraid. It hasn't sold yet. So if it had sold, I would, but because it hasn't sold yet, and I'm still in the, like, I'm doing my own personal edits on it right now, I can't really, I jinx it.
How do you develop
Again,
characters?
it has like a really strong theme and strong female characters, and yeah, so it really focuses on a very strong theme.
How do you develop characters? Do you base anything on anybody you know in real life or situations you've heard?
I've never based anything on any real people. However, I think all authors kind of feed in any external stimuli can feed into our characters. So for example, if I'm standing in the line at like Starbucks and I'm waiting for my coffee, and there's a woman in front of me who's doing something with an earring, maybe that might go into a character. Just like little bits like that, kind of just as I'm observing people and life and just going about my day. Or maybe I'll see a dog that's particularly enthusiastic in the park, and I'll be like, oh, I want to write about that dog or a dog like it. So I've never written about an actual person, but definitely people around me, people I see in my everyday life, and things that my friends do, you know, those little characteristics will show up for sure. The way that I develop my character, I develop plot first. So I always have kind of a story first, and then I usually just start writing. I don't really have any idea who the character is. And as I write, I figure out what character needs to be within the realm of that plot. So if I have a plot about whatever, then what character is going to struggle the most? Like what character and her or his past will make that journey really, really hard, because that's where tension comes from. So that's where the suspense is that tension. And like, how are they struggling within that story? How are they, you know, feeling sad or scared or exhausted by that plot? And how is that affecting them, and why? So from that why, then I find out what maybe their backstory is and what trauma they had as a child or as an adult that affects them in that plot. So that's how I develop the characters, is I find out, I just write the story, and then as I'm writing, I figure out the character, and I go back and I edit, and then I go forward and I write some more, and then I go back and I edit some more. So I have a very, very messy process. I am not one of these organized writers who's like there in their like screenwriting document, moving things around. I'm just like, bleh. But I find that's how I work, and I've tried really hard to do it other ways. So I've bought like this, you know, that plastic sort of white plastic board that you can just put onto your wall and then you write on it. I bought that. I bought everything, just trying to like figure out how to plot my books, but I just don't think that way. Like my creativity is much more impulsive. So like, as I'm writing, I figure out, this character, it would be really difficult for them if XYZ. So then I go back and I change it. And then so there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of editing. And while I'm editing, I keep a document that I call the word graveyard. So as I go back and I delete different bits, I'll put all those words into the word graveyard. So I keep everything. And then at the end, after I've finished the story, I'll go back and I'll look at the word graveyard. And there's always like 20,000 words that I've completely wasted. But, you know, I've kept it just in case, you know, maybe a different character will needs that journey, or something that I've said about maybe their, I don't know, their hair. I don't know. So I always keep the word graveyard and just have a little quick look through at the end.
With Charlie, the dog, based off of any dog that you know?
No,
Question.
no, not at all. I just so my first dogs, I had beagles, and my boyfriend at the time, he wanted me to get basset hounds, and I was like, no, when I researched, I was like, no, it looks like they have a lot of ear problems, so no, I'll get beagles. But basset hounds are so cute, right? So I just thought I'll rewrite my past. I'll put a basset hound in there. I like your
dog goes
cat
away.
in the back.
Oh, thank you. That's Aria. She's an
I was gonna
honorary
say-
book club member.
Yeah.
She is. She makes her appearances, I think, at everyone usually.
Mhm.
Cute.
Well, yeah, because it's morning here, and so it's, you know, cat feeding time. We have to feed the cat separately, so she eats her
Ah.
breakfast with me.
Oh, cute. I have one cat and one dog. I have one of each.
We're ridiculous. We have cats, dogs, birds, bunnies, tortoises.
Oh, wow. My kids would love it.
There's a rescue frog. There's a rescue tarantula.
Aw.
It's ridiculous.
Grant,
Ooh,
Tarantula. Wow. That's brave.
yeah.
I don't
Had
mess
me-
with her. I don't mess with her either. We don't mess with each other. It's fine.
Yeah.
Twinkle Toes sticks to her web and I feed her. We have an agreement. We don't mess with each other. It's fine.
Great name.
Mhm.
Did anybody else have any questions? What were you working on that's becoming, is it a show or a movie? Jesse, were you the one that brought that up?
Yeah. I didn't do deep research though, and I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No, it's
yeah.
okay.
So The Night Olivia Fell, my first book, has been optioned for TV. It was optioned ages ago. I don't know what's happening. Everything in Hollywood is kind of delayed because of the pandemic. So it's a good 2 years behind. So if anything happens, it will probably be ages in the future, because I think typically what happens is those like really big books that get converted into movies, those things happen first. And then the books like The Night Olivia Fell, it wasn't a huge book. So it's kind of sitting there. And I have no idea what's happening with it. They don't really tell me. Yeah. Once you sell the rights to Hollywood, to anywhere in Hollywood, you just lose all control of it. You have no idea. No, like I can't even look at this. They've written a script for TV. No, I've not seen it. Like you just lose all control.
so do you like,
Bummer.
when you sell it, you sell the rights, do you just get like one lump sum, or do you do something where you like get royalties off of whatever when it's aired,
Oh.
or that kind of
No,
thing?
there's no royalties, at least not the way mine is structured. So the way that it usually works is they pay an option, and the option isn't very much. It's just a little bit that they give you. And then if it does get made into a movie or a TV series, then you get the big lump sum.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah. But it might be different for other people. I'm not sure. That's how it is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If this Do No Harm was cast or made a movie or a show, do you have anybody that you envision for like Emma and Nate and Josh and any characters?
I never do
Actresses,
that. I know
actors.
some people do, but I never try to, especially when I'm writing, because I really want to make sure that my characters are their own people. I do not even think about any celebrities or famous people. And then by the time they're done, to me, I can see them so clearly in my head that I just actually can't think of them as anybody else. Like I don't know. I can't think of anybody that I would cast them as, because I can only see them as themselves, which is why I'm not a casting agent.
What gave you the idea for the evil doctor? Like that like comes into, I mean, he's I guess he's in the beginning of her life, or well,
Yeah.
not the beginning of her life, but when she loses her parents, that
Yeah.
episode, and then he comes back, and he obviously is involved with her brother. but
Yeah.
she doesn't know that.
Yeah. So I think to me, it was again to show first of all, you need tension in a book. So I needed an antagonist there. But also to show that people start out good, quite a lot of the time. And again, for him, he just became a bit corrupted along the way, because that's sometimes for some doctors that's what happens. And especially in this opioid epidemic, I think there have been a number of doctors that it's happened to. But then, of course, on the flip side, there are so many doctors who wanted to be able to give the drugs out of compassion because they didn't want to see their patients in pain, so just presenting both of those sides.
What was your favorite scene to develop, and what was the most challenging?
My favorite
the book?
scene. My favorite scene was the first one, which is kind of a flashback to what happens later when she's stabbed. That like drama, I really, really loved that. The most challenging one for sure was when Nate died. I cried. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, just writing that was very, very hard. And it took me a few days because it was difficult to lose somebody who I developed that far. And I was like, am I really doing the right thing here? And then I thought about writing different scenes, but I really felt like that was the right one. And I talked to my editor about it, and she was like, no, I think that's a good call. But writing that was very emotional. So that was really hard to develop. And I had an idea in my head how I wanted it to go, but it was just like,
He was so idealistic and positive about the whole thing. So when he died, it was kind of like that death of that, idealism and positivity of like,
yeah, it was kind of like okay, she is fully corrupted now. And that is what kind of kickstarted her to actually finish her corruption arc and become completely corrupted. And that's why at the end, then there's a hint that perhaps she is addicted as well. And, she got what she wanted, Josh lived, but again, at what cost? And now if she's addicted as well, like what will happen from that? So she had to lose some things too.
And I guess like a different, when you think about it, like, well, what would the alternative? Like, let's say if she's a doctor and this happens and they're in the situation they're both in with the incomes they both have and the debts they both have and so forth. And if they don't if she didn't do it, so her son would not be able to have that treatment and die.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be hard to see, sort of see that path down to its end. Unless the other thing I was thinking is like, well, if she didn't do that and they just started taking steps like, we're going to lose our house. Okay. So now we're going to go live here. And that, all the things that happen to families that.
Yeah. So I think that's what would happen in real life. Hopefully you take these steps.
Right.
Yeah. But I think in the pages of the book, she just went a bit farther and she was like, no, I'm not going to take any chances here. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to get this done. And she knew what she was doing was wrong. And that's why she didn't tell Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she wasn't too smart about that's one thing I was reading earlier. Like, she's like, there's cameras in these stores that you're throwing your prescription slips around in. And, like as a criminal, I think she starts out being, you don't just keep things in your clothes closet or whatnot.
I mean, she's never been a criminal before. So I had to make that so that she does some really dumb things. Like she goes into the Walmart or the Target and buys the phones there. And of course there's cameras everywhere. But when you haven't lived a life of being a criminal, you wouldn't think of these things. You would think of them later and go, oh no, reflect on that and go, oh, what have I done?
That's why I would.
I think she didn't have a criminal's mind. She was just like trying to save her kid's life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions?
Do you think Josh grows up to be a cop like his dad?
Oh yeah.
That's a good question. I would think he would. Yeah, for sure. Like to kind of honor his dad. I think that Emma will would definitely kind of idolize Nate, and that would put Josh on a path to idolizing his dad and want to be a cop just like him. Yeah.
Well, it was interesting when Nate found out his dad was not the good cop that
Good
he
cop, yeah.
envisioned that he was. That was surprising to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about if Josh finds out the truth about what his mom did?
Yeah, and about his dad. Yeah. And that's occurred to me before as well. Like, what if he finds out that his mom is to blame for all of that? Like, would he ever forgive her, or would that be like a complete break off? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Be interesting to write a sequel and find out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you see that playing out?
Do you know? I don't know. I've never written a sequel before. I don't know, because when I put a book to bed, it's done. Like that story's wrapped up. I've only ever written standalone, so I'm not sure if I would ever do that, because I feel like that story reached the conclusion it needed to reach. So then I move on to the next story. I don't know if they paid me enough money.
You're right. I'm sure you'll come up with a good sequel to that.
Are you reading anything right now just for fun?
I'm not reading anything, and the reason why is because I'm in edits for, usually I am, but because I'm in edits for my next book, I very, intentionally I'm not reading. Now I usually am all throughout the writing process and whatever I am, but I have to get some edits done like before Thanksgiving. So I'm trying to like really buckle down and focus. So I haven't been reading anything. Has anybody else been reading anything good? Actually, my husband, our family, we have this tradition that every Christmas Eve we get each other we get books for Christmas Eve, and we always make a gingerbread house and decorate a gingerbread house like early in December, and then on Christmas Eve when we open up our books, we eat the gingerbread house. So that's like one of our like Christmas Eve traditions. And he was asking me, well, what book do you want this year, because you have all the books? And I was like, actually, I don't know, because I'm not reading any books right now, so I don't know. Do you guys have any good suggestions?
Let's see.
I was going to say, we've got a few left this year that we're still reading. Samantha Downing is joining us December 5th for Your Own Good. She was the first author that ever joined us last year.
Her most recent one. Yeah, it's good.
Super excited to have her back and read that. That's our next one.
I loved it. It's not one of our book club books, but All the Light We Cannot See. So that author has a new novel out. It just got released, his last novel was so. To me, I just was like.
Who's the author?
It's Anthony Doerr, Doerr.
Okay, I haven't read that one. Okay, that's
really good.
That book, All the Light.
All the Light You Cannot See. Okay, I'm gonna write that down.
All the Light We Cannot See. It's outstanding. So I'm thinking about getting the next. I haven't got it, but this new one.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll ask my husband for that for our Christmas Eve tradition.
Nice. I love that tradition.
Yeah, it's fun. Oh, but you're gonna love talking to Samantha. I loved her book. She just writes such devious characters. She's like a mad genius,
I love her characters. We had her join last year for her book. And I just love her as a person in general. I'm like, she's just so fun.
Yeah, she's great.
I've loved all her books, so I'm excited for that one. We had to move it. She had a hurricane hit.
Yeah, that's right.
So we moved some things around to help so that she could still join us.
Good. Oh, you're gonna have fun.
Yeah, she's really wonderful. So I think that's our next one up post holidays.
Cool. Does anybody have any other questions for me?
Even fun questions if you have them. I'm like, I love those. I love when we learn more about you. Where are you? So you're from Washington, but where do you live?
So I'm from Seattle, but I live in London.
I was going to say,
I heard the accent, so I wondered.
Yeah.
Well, I went to university in Ireland, and then I met my to-be husband, and we got married, and then he received a scholarship and he's actually from the UK anyways, and he received a scholarship to Imperial College. And so we moved over here to London, and we were only here that time for about a year, and we moved back to America and had our first son. And we were only there for about 3 years. We just never really settled in the way, sometimes you just go back and then you get back there and you're like, oh, this isn't really what I remember, because you're a different person. I mean, it had been like so long since I'd been back, and moving back to the suburbs, it was like just not what I really actually wanted after living in London. And he never really settled in either. So we decided to move back to London, and we've been here ever since.
Wow, nice. How long have you been married to him? And
we have been married for, oh God, what is a year? 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been here for a while. I mean, we had 3 of them back in America, back in Seattle, but the rest of the time here, and I think we're pretty settled here. Yeah, I love it. We used to live kind of more into central London, but now we live by like Wimbledon. Do you know where the tennis is? Mm-hmm. So we live quite close to there, and it's just really nice. London's great because there's so many parks everywhere, so you can go throughout the whole city and never leave a park. You'll just always be in a green area. Yeah. So I really like that. Coming from Seattle, that means a lot to me. But I do really miss the water. I miss being close to like the sea, and so that's hard.
But you're so close to Ireland. My dream is to go to Ireland. And
Ireland's great. I spent my university years there, and it's a lot of fun. Like, best place to go when you're in college. It's so much fun, a lot of drinking, a lot of just great people, just a lot of fun times, but I did always feel a bit landlocked because it's quite small. It's a small island, and you can only really go from Dublin to Galway. Everything outside of that is very much like rural. Mm-hmm. So I think London probably suits me better. I'm a little bit more of a city girl.
Yeah.
Even though I live in the suburbs now, I'm a city girl.
How many kids do you have?
I have two boys. One is 13. He's just turned 13. And the other is 8. He's just turned 8. It's a big gap between them.
Well, thank you for being with us today, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Like, I haven't read any of your other books before.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to, I guess, the new one. But
yeah. I mean, because I haven't sold it and it takes so long, who knows when that will be. But yeah, I do have The Night Olivia Fell and Behind Every Lie out. And then Do No Harm came out earlier this year, and hopefully in it'd probably be, I'd say, 2 years if they buy it, hopefully, fingers crossed. Most of last year I spent doing homeschooling and just trying to be there for the boys during the whole lockdown and everything. And that was hard, trying to homeschool. I am not a teacher anyway. And especially they're such different ages, like trying to teach them such different things. And they teach things so different now, like even in math, like when I was a kid, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but we did the column method for, say, subtraction. You'd have 25 minus 15, and we did it in a column. And now they do something with a number line. So I had to teach myself that stuff. I was like, what?
I would have been lost. Yeah.
Oh, I had a few like, I just felt like I was going to tear my hair out a few times.
When the pandemic started, I still worked with mothers recovering from addiction. And so here I am with like 6 moms who are in recovery from like meth and heroin, and they're trying to sit down and teach their kids like doing this distance learning. And they don't know how to do it, and I don't know how to do it. Everybody's crying. It was awful. It was like, this is terrible. And I would FaceTime my friends back in Georgia who are also moms trying to do this at home, and they're all crying. And so I was like showing my ladies, like, look, it's not just you.
Yeah,
It's
other people are crying.
If it makes you feel any better, Jesse, the teachers had no idea what they were doing either.
I feel like everybody was just crying through that whole situation.
Yeah, it was very hard.
Teachers were like teaching kids in school,
No.
and like on Zoom simultaneously, like how it's like crazy.
And then everything was crashing or freezing. Yeah, it was hard.
Working. Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. At least I didn't have to teach my oldest physics. He just did that online. So I was like, and my husband, that's what he got his master's degree in. So I was like, you can do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't even imagine. I don't want to imagine, let's put it that way. I'm like, I didn't do it well with math when it was my turn to take it. So let alone if I had children to teach it. I'm like,
No.
That was not my strength. I'm like,
it took a whole other level of patience that I didn't even know I was capable of. So in a way, maybe that was good to know that I'm capable of it sometimes.
you are. If you can do that, that's amazing.
Yeah, how the math is taught now is totally different than how we were taught. And so I like for the last 4 years, like sitting down with these ladies who are trying to get their GEDs and having to learn how to do the math the way they're being taught.
The way they do it. Yeah, that's the tricky part.
They can do it, like, oh my gosh, and trying to not show that frustration and to be like, yeah, we can do this. This is fine.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest thing is trying to not show that frustration.
Yeah.
When like, it was like really triggering for me. I was like flashbacks of not being able to do my math. And I'm like, oh, you know, that kind of like panic that you get when you can't and you can't figure it out their way. Like obviously I knew a lot of the answers, but I'm like, but how do you get to the answers? It's very different from how I do.
Well, why did they change it? Like what was wrong to begin with? I'm like, we solved the problems.
It's the old way, the way that we learned when we were kids was really just rote memorization. Here's your facts, memorize them, this is how you do it. The way they teach it now is actually how most people's brains process math problems. So when you're sitting there doing like you're multiplying a big number, your brain's automatically going to say, okay, well, this number is closest to this. We're going to round that. And then we're going to break it down and subtract the other. And that's what they're teaching now is the written way how to do that versus memorize your math facts. So
show all of their work.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's just
on in your head, you do like the round it off, you get a figure, then you add, you do like the
add or you subtract the difference. So that's what they teach now, but it's not okay, well, this is how your brain's going to do it. Even though we're teaching you to memorize it. It's like, okay, your brain's going to teach you to this. So we're going to show you how to write all this out. And it seems like a longer process because that's not how we learned it. Yeah. But it's the same thing that we already do in our brains. They just write it out now.
That's interesting. Okay. That's good to know. I always wondered, I'm like, and everybody says like when I've tried to listen to somebody explain it, I'm like, no, I'm like, I already struggled and you're just making it that much worse. Like I was confused to start and now I want to cry. So we're good.
I'm a paraprofessional for first graders this year. During the pandemic, I worked with kindergarten. So that was just a whole level of craziness. But like even my daughter now, she's 10, she's in 4th grade, and like the math that they're learning, I'm sitting there going, I don't know what this is. Let me look this up real fast. Cause she's like, no, mom, you have to do it this method. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it is. Same.
Yeah.
And then it's not that like the questions are really that difficult. It's just trying to teach yourself to do it their way.
Yeah.
To teach them to do it their way.
Yeah.
And like so many times I was like, can you just do it my way?
I'm like, my way doesn't even work half the time, to be honest, let alone figuring out a new way and trying to teach it. I'm like,
my way now is like a computer.
My way is a calculator.
I love the calculator.
I love the calculator. Yeah, absolutely.
Siri.
I love when Siri's wonderful. I loved when they said, you're not going to have calculators. You need to learn to do this by your head. Like there's not always going to be one available. And I'm like, are you sure about that? I'm like, because I'm
pretty sure there is.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna always have one.
A calculator.
I'm like, I'm gonna have one of those. Even if
payroll accounting, and so people people think like I know something about math, but it's just
spreadsheets and software formulas.
But you still have to catch it. You and I talked about that. I'm like, because you deal with numbers far more than I do. I'm like, so we talked about that. I'm like, if it was my job, I would cry.
Yeah, I'm glad my job is more words than numbers.
Yeah, it's much
And mine
more.
is pictures. So I do graphic design work and art direction for the government. So different government clients.
Much
I mean,
more fun
cool.
than
There's a reason I'm only with first graders, so my math skills are pretty low.
They're probably better than mine, Brooke. I'm like, I've got the calculator that they said I was not going to have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I use.
they told me I wouldn't, and I proved them wrong.
Well, then
Yep.
you do have to teach the kids using calculators, right? I mean, they have to learn that.
We teach them how to use computers in kindergarten. They
Yeah.
start with their iPads
you
and
really?
Chromebooks in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son has to do coding, like
Mhm.
computer
Yeah.
coding. He's had
Yep.
to do it since first grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun.
Oh.
It's kind of like moving blocks around and coding
Mhm.
things. Like it's
Yeah.
simple,
Right.
but yeah. And I think that's great. I didn't
That's
learn
good.
that,
That's good.
obviously.
I was like, they were not teaching us that in kindergarten, first grade, things like that.
Oh.
I'm like,
I don't think I learned anything in kindergarten or first or second or maybe even third.
Oh,
I remember something with the
Kindergarten was
turtle, and we
math.
had a program. The turtle had to move and draw shapes using
Oh.
DOS. I was in
Oh.
elementary school. I mean,
I was like,
it was a long
we
time
didn't do
ago.
that. We didn't
Windows
do
wasn't a
that.
thing yet. No, Windows wasn't a thing yet. So it was all with like DOS, and
Wow.
couldn't tell you any of it now. But
Yeah.
Somewhat. I'm like, that's pretty incredible. I'm like, I can't even remember what I ate last week, let alone things I learned in kindergarten.
I remember things I was bad at in kindergarten and first grade. Math was one of those things.
Math has always been one of those things for me. I'm like, it was
Yep.
traumatic. That was the first time
Yeah.
I ever brought home a C, and I
Me
knew I was
too.
in trouble. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always got really good grades except for math. In
Yep.
fact, my first D, the only D I ever got was
Yeah.
in geometry.
Same
Geometry is the
here.
hardest
I
thing.
couldn't. I
Mine-
still don't get it.
Still don't
Mine was
understand
algebra.
it.
I was good at geometry and horrible at algebra. So
Oh,
my
how funny. I
first,
was opposite.
Yep.
I had
same.
an F initially in algebra, and we like B's were bad in my house growing up. Like if we
Hmm.
brought home a B, we needed to hide. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
here I am with an F, and I'm like, it's okay. In my head, I'm like,
yeah, it's
kind of
fine.
like Emma in the story where she's like, I can fix it. You separate. Like this is where I am right now. But I'm like, I get her coping tactic. I'm like, 'cause I feel like I've used that a time or two where I'm like, okay, this is where I am right now. We're just gonna like disassociate ourselves, separate ourselves. I'm like, it's only an F. I'm like, but I'm gonna fix it before my mom ever finds out. I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
in her house
try
right now.
as an
I
A.
hope. Yeah, I'm like, it's just one little line down and
Go.
it's acceptable. And so I lied about it. I signed the progress. I forged, like Emma, forged the progress
Oh,
report because
wow. You went all out.
so yeah, I ain't got caught. So not a good liar. Could not get away with things. Got caught with the progress report. So we know I'm not made out for anything crazy.
Nope.
Aw.
No. No.
No.
Oh, hello, kitty.
Felix. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been
Yeah,
great.
of course. It's been
Thank
so
you.
nice talking to you all.
It's really nice.
And I'm happy to come back and chat when my next book comes out.
I was
Love
going to
that.
say you'll have our support, so we'll definitely pick it up. And then
Thank
if you're ever
you.
interested, I don't know how your publishing works, but we do ARCs sometimes. So we're doing one with Grady Hendrix next year, where
Okay.
so we record it. We do like 10 to 15 reviews so that you'll have a bunch of reviews before it starts.
Oh,
And then
cool.
we do a blog recap. And then we do a song list, like we do a set list of songs that like
Cool.
correlate. And so I design artwork that looks like your book basically
Oh,
with
how
the songs.
fun.
And we do a Spotify playlist of those songs.
Oh, that sounds
So-
amazing. Okay, I'll definitely keep that in mind.
So if you're
Yeah.
interested for the next one when it's
Yeah.
bought and out there, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right. Well, hopefully everybody follows me on Instagram, and I'm not really on Facebook as much anymore, but you can find me over there as well. And stay in touch.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
happy holidays. Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
with
much.
us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Happy holidays, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.